Last semester I had the pleasure of working with Will Roper and Sheriko Quinn in conjunction with the Office of International Education at Beloit College to find out why fewer men at Beloit College were studying abroad than women. And so in this process we decided to do research on previous studies that had been conducted on a national level and to conduct our own study at Beloit College where we interviewed Beloit students, all male, who had not studied abroad, who were seniors. Okay. In our research we found that 65% of women, 65% of the students who studied abroad were women and only 35% were male in 1996. And it was conjectured at that time that if programs improved, that would be more appropriate for fields that were considered male-dominant, that men would start going abroad. And so within that 10-year period, programs appeared that really were geared towards the sciences, were geared towards improving business management, were science programs that already existed. But within that 10-year period, you can see that it remained fairly static. There has been no change in the number of men going abroad, which is still about 35% of those who study abroad are male. So the research that we conducted suggested that the obstacles that existed for men did not exist for women, those being major, their career, finances, or sports. And in one study in particular, the men were asked to speculate on why men weren't going abroad, but women were. And the men admitted themselves quite readily that men were less proactive in their education and were unwilling to leave their friends and their comfort zones. Beloit versus the national picture. At Beloit, we only send 20 to 30% of our, of the students who go abroad, only 20 to 30% are male, which is about 5 to 10% below the national average, which is hovering at around 35 to 40%. Okay, and this is quite surprising because at Beloit College, we pride ourselves on our strong international programs. It's part of our mission statement as a school, and it's also heavily advertised in our admissions booklets and our programs where we try and get students to come to the school. And it's also, there's a consensus among faculty members and students that study abroad is an important component of the international education and international focus at the school. Okay. And then the rest of the data is all based on Beloit College. And so at Beloit, there are, in fields that are generally associated with study abroad, there are even fewer men going abroad than women. For instance, in international relations, where 83% of the students who go of women who are majors go abroad versus only 52% of the majors who are men. So that's a big difference. What accounts for the 30% difference? So that was part of our questions. Why in this field would fewer men choose to go abroad, even though it's considered a major component of that major? In fields that are considered traditionally male, the women were starting to go abroad in large numbers. They found these programs that were science-based and took advantage of them. And econ, for instance, half of the female majors went abroad versus 20%. It's a very large difference. The women were clearly noticing the opportunities that existed for them in their fields and were taking advantage of them, whereas the men were not. If you look at chemistry, physics, and math, the difference is enormous. 43% of female majors still find the opportunity to go abroad versus 11% of the men. Varsity sports also do not matter for women. A majority of female varsity athletes go abroad versus a very drastic minority. These are the two columns to pay attention to. You can see that women still go abroad even though they're part of varsity sports, whereas the men do not. So we took this into consideration when we decided why men wouldn't go abroad, which I'll talk about more. So part of our study was to ask 11 full-time male students why they didn't study abroad. We gave them 23 questions that were based on factors in choosing Beloit College, their perceptions of study abroad before they came, and the influences on them as to why they wouldn't study, and then we asked them to also speculate on the gender imbalance. Our findings were that in attracting them to Beloit College, study abroad was not the most important. But what was stressed and why they chose Beloit was more about academics and campus life, the opportunities that they would have on campus, versus understanding how study abroad would be a major impact in their in their career or in their major. They all shared a positive view of study abroad, and they understood the benefits that many other students receive from going abroad, but there was a real disconnect in their understanding of how it would actually affect them in their careers, even though a majority of CEOs in the Fortune 500 companies have gone abroad. And so their perceptions, they thought it expanded your worldview, and that it was that it opened you up to new cultures and ideas, and marketable even for jobs, and that they all held a slightly positive outlook on it, but they didn't understand how it would be positive for themselves. So when we asked about the influences as to why they didn't study abroad, 10 of the 11 reported they had no serious conversations with their advisors or their coaches, and we found that to be part of the major problem at the school. Though they did say that their parents would have supported it if they had decided to do so, and that finances were not as important, that they could find the means to go. And then another major surprise was that language was one of the reasons that held them back. Although being a language student in all my classes, except for Russian, mostly they're all women, so probably shouldn't have been surprised. They said that study abroad doesn't really apply to me as a computer science major, that they didn't, one student said that he didn't think it was relevant to his major or his career, and the idea that he had to learn a language was less motivating. It was a real drawback. Another student said that that he could go abroad later after he was finished with school because then it would be less expensive for him, and he thought he would still get the same personal benefits because he didn't believe that academic benefits would be relevant in his major or in his career. Another student regretted the fact that he hadn't gone because he saw how his friends had really developed as people. And so one student said that I don't think study abroad would have changed my Beloit College experience. People who go don't come back different. And then other students thought that it really had a positive impact on people. But one student said he didn't see the value of experiential learning and was afraid of reintegration, that if he came back, when he came back, he would be too different, wouldn't fit into a social group. So that was a major problem. We felt that the students were afraid of coming back and being able to reintegrate into their teams and into their social groups on campus. When we asked them to speculate on why men don't study abroad, they said that there's a certain level of fear involved with it. Maybe men aren't willing to get past this, that it exposed their weaknesses, that they didn't want to feel out of control, that it was daunting, the application process. And then they said that females may recognize the need to do as much as they can with their education, and that they were open to to adventures and see new things. And so our final conclusion was that males are uncomfortable outside of the social constructions that they create and don't want to lose, they can't get away from their teams or from their friends, and males want someone to push them to do it. So what we felt would be the solution would be for advisors at our school to maybe push men along and show them the advantages within their careers for studying abroad. Thank you very much.